Radio WRNR studios. It's time for Eastern Panhandle Talk with Rob Mario and David Welch.
Good morning, and thank you for listening to our program. This first segment of our show brought to you today by Miller Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Route 9 east of Martinsburg, home of the lifetime powertrain warranty. Good morning, Davey.
Rob, good morning to you. And despite the sunshine outside and the brilliance of this late spring day, we kind of start off on a sad note this morning.
Here we do. Deputy Joaquin Moore, who by all accounts in the journal article I read today was just an outstanding member of the county police department. He served as a deputy sheriff for 4.5 years and was an SRO at Spring Mills High School. And also, while there at Reading, he volunteered coaching the track team and the football team, too.
Totally dedicated to the kids, and his life seemed to be not only all about public service, but especially to, you know, in this day and age, helping to keep a high school safe, and then spending his free time to do even more. This is a sad community today, the death of Deputy Joaquin Moore.
Certainly be missed by everybody at Spring Mills High School and the Berkeley County Sheriff's Department, his family, and our community, too. We've asked Sheriff Curtis Keller to join us, and he does now, courtesy of the WVU Medicine Berkeley Medical Center talk line. Curtis, good morning. Thank you so much for spending some time with us on what is has been a very long night for the Berkeley County Sheriff's Department, and certainly a very sad morning for those of us in Berkeley County and our community.
Yeah, Rob, thanks, Dave, both of you, thanks. It's been a long day yesterday and a long night last night, so the department's working hard to get through this, and it's a big loss to us.
Can you give us any details as to what happened? I understand he was off duty. It was on a motorcycle?
Yes, sir. He was... we're still patching together certain aspects of what took place, but yeah, at that time he was off duty and he was on his motorcycle, and where he was going, we're still trying to figure out where he was headed to at that time.
Do we know what time of day and what location this happened?
Yeah, it was around 11 o'clock yesterday morning. It was on the Mid-Atlantic Parkway there, where the Houston distributing access is off of Mid-Atlantic. That's where the incident occurred.
And do we know what the incident was? Was it a collision with another vehicle or something, or what?
Well, actually, it was a collision with one vehicle, and then another vehicle was damaged as part of the collision, the first collision.
Were there any other injuries, Sheriff?
No, sir.
Okay.
Just everybody was really shaken up about it.
What about his family? Have you been in touch? I'm sure you have, but can you tell us a little bit about his family and who he leaves behind?
Yes, his mother. He leaves behind his mother and a daughter who is 12 years old.
Oh, that's tragic.
So that was his family. He's got brothers and sisters also.
Curtis, can you tell us about the man?
Joaquin was one of the better deputies that I had in the department. He was always a go-getter. When I first took office, we had some problems. I guess you're all aware of the school resource officer at that time. And we was looking for somebody to replace the one that we was dealing with. And Joaquin stepped right up and came in to me and the chief and said, "I'll do this job." So he stepped forward right away and said, I'll do it. He didn't really want to come off the road, but he wanted to help us in the department. So he jumped right in there and said, "I'll do it for you."
I remember the last time you were on this program, it had to be, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we were talking about your school resource officers at the 3 county high schools and how and of the great work they were all doing.
Yes, they do excellent work. All 3 of them do. And, of course, the whole department in a whole does a great job for the community. We take pride in what we do, and we try to protect and help the citizens any way we can. And he was one of them that was actually a little bit beyond that. Like you said, by coaching and doing extra at the school, he did that on his own.
Can you tell us anything about, if you've gotten to that point yet, tell us anything about what the funeral services might be like, and will the other deputies be participating in that?
Oh, yes, sir. As far as the what's going to happen, we haven't gotten back with the mother yet. We just met with them yesterday. We're going to make contact with them today, and we offered everything to them that we could as far as help. And but yeah, once the arrangements are made and everything, all the deputies will participate in that. Yes, sir.
I'm reading some of the comments in the article in the newspaper from the school as to his contributions there. Curtis, can you tell me what kind of comments you got about Deputy Moore from the school or from the public in general?
Like I said, he was dedicated to his job. He was one officer that was, tried to help anybody he could in the community, whether it was a good thing or a bad thing. He always worked to make sure that he got the job done and did a good job for the people. And the school, he started off up at Musselman. He was up there, and of course, we rotate the SROs. So the following school year in August or September, we moved down to Spring Mills. And once we moved him down there, he got with the principals and the children down there, and they loved him. So, he was well respected wherever he went.
Can you tell me how you got the news yesterday, Sheriff Keller?
Myself and Chief, we were actually we were talking in the office, and our department handled the accident. So one of the deputies got on the scene here, and he called right away to us, and that's how we got the information on it.
And I don't want to be too graphic here, but at the time you got there, was Deputy Moore still alive, or had he already passed by the time emergency vehicles had arrived?
When we got there, he had already passed, sir.
That's very sad. Well, Sheriff Keller, thank you so much for your time this morning. Obviously, this isn't an easy thing to do and talk about at this time, but we do appreciate you sharing this information with us and our audience, too. And please know that we're feeling for everybody there at the Sheriff's Department. This is obviously quite tragic.
Yeah, it's hard for all of us, but we're working together to get through it. And I just want to thank all the other departments and agencies throughout the state and local that they're offering all their help that they can for us to get us through this.
Thank you so much, Curtis. We do appreciate it.
Yes, sir. You have a good day.
That's Sheriff Curtis Keller on the WVU Medicine Jefferson Medical Center talk line. The tragedy of the death of Deputy Joaquin Moore, age 30, yesterday over on the Mid-Atlantic Parkway. And it's you kind of put two and two together here. Of course, yesterday when Matt Crawford came in, he said, if you need to go anywhere, you want to avoid the Mid-Atlantic Parkway, there was an accident there, and things are quite backed up at the time.
He had no details at that time.
You don't know.
And this is, I think, when an officer or a deputy sheriff, anyone in uniform law enforcement, when a brother goes down, they all rally together, and I'm sure that they all feel this pain. As a community, it's a tight-knit group.
My neighbor is an SRO at Damascus High School in northern Montgomery County, just below the Frederick County line, and he's lived across the street from me for, I guess, almost 20 years, almost the entire time I've been in my house. And they become part of the high school. It's like they're, it's almost like they're another department of the high school. In fact, they know the kids, they know the teachers, they know the coaches. This is what they do every day. They are there building relationships, and they put out fires before they start because they know everything that's going on in the school. The good ones do, the ones who really care, and that's most of these folks.
Yeah, and it's kind of it's one of those jobs, and maybe you could say this a lot of times about a lot of law enforcement people, police officers or sheriff deputies, whatever your assignment might be. But it's sort of an unsung. You brought up the term, they put out a lot of fires before they get to be fires. That's so true of the work that so many of them do. And I would imagine in an assignment like being an SRO at a high school, that you're right. They get to know the kids, the teachers. They observe things. They probably settle a lot of disputes before they become big disputes. Mm-hmm. and God bless them all. Yeah, it's a tragic loss for the entire community, and our hearts, our prayers, our thoughts really do go out to Sheriff Keller and the chief and all of the deputy sheriffs and really even all of the police officers, because they all work together, city and county together. I'm sure they're all feeling this pain.
Indeed. Woody Thrasher was dismissed by the governor yesterday from his job as Commerce Secretary. This was not a surprise. It was something that was expected, and it was delivered yesterday with his resignation by request of the governor.
Mm-hmm.
And the Democrats followed by asking for the governor's resignation if he doesn't improve. I thought that was kind of fascinating. Did you see that?
Yeah, and I think that that's not going to happen over this, and but it is the political season, and the Democratic leaders, I think, need to do things to bring certain things to the attention of the people. It doesn't seem like what did Harry Truman say? The buck stops here. So it's not a surprise that Woody Thrasher probably had to go over what seems to be some awfully bad mismanagement of this whole situation as it relates to getting the victims of the flood 2 years ago, getting them some relief. Somewhere along the line, this has been a huge screw up. Calling for the governor's resignation might be a little extreme, but it's politics.
Roman Prezioso and Tim Miley led the charge in that. The governor responded in a letter that was, as you would expect, he came out and attacked back. But you mentioned the Harry Truman phrase, "the buck stops here." Do you associate that with the governor of this state? Do you think the buck stops here? Do you think he takes responsibility when things don't go well? Or do you think he passes it off on somebody else?
I think during his 2 years, he has had a great tendency to blame everything on the legislature. And you can go back to some of the antics that he pulled off in not this session, but the one before with the nothing burger and the cow dung and everything else. There does seem to be a consistent pattern of blaming other people and then his own erratic leadership at times. The teacher strike being, I think, the latest example where it was he insisted that he could do no better than a 1% a year raise over 5 years, and he held to that. And then it took him, he got in his car and he went on a tour of the high schools and came back, and all of a sudden there was going to be a 5% raise this year. You just never know where he's coming from. There doesn't seem to be any consistent agenda there, and that can be unsettling sometimes. It's interesting to me because I think it sounds good to say we need to have more people in government who have run businesses. It sounds good.
It does.
And because I know in running a business and being a part of the private sector, and not being a government employee throughout my life and having to make decisions and watch other people make decisions in business where you are so responsible for, making a profit, let's say, or reporting to a board of directors. It's a whole different kind of thing. Running government isn't like running a business necessarily. There are probably some good business principles that you could instill in government. I get that. But you can't run a state the way you run a private sector, wholly owned business like the Greenbrier or some of his oil businesses. It doesn't work that way.
For one thing, you can't order people around.
You can't.
You can't order the legislature around.
No, you can't do that. They're an equal branch of government. And but this whole thing with the situation as it is, and Woody Thrasher gets in the middle of this, of course, because he's expected to make all of it happen. You just have to understand that this is a whole different. You have to have people who understand the mechanics. I would think the mechanics of government. There are experts in being able to administer large sums of money, let's say, and move it through a bureaucracy. And why that isn't happening is, confusing to most of us. Is it more complicated than we think? Why isn't it getting down to the people that really need it? At the end of the day, that's what we all want. There's $150 million sitting somewhere, right?
Right.
And it's not getting out to help people who are still without power, still without homes.
We saw one case where a family living in a trailer as a temporary place for 2 years now, without running water, without heat, without electricity, and repeated letters were sent to different departments of the state, including the governor himself, I think, at one point, before some action was finally taken.
And when you look at a situation like this, Rob, as a citizen, as a voter, you start looking at, well, they can't do that. Then you begin to doubt the whole thing. You look at this, what's gone on at the state Supreme Court and all of that mismanagement of funds. And as a voter in West Virginia, you start to think, does anything work down there anymore?
Why should you have faith in your government?
Right. Why should you? I mean, you can't get money to people who need it. You've got state Supreme Court justices who
seem to have more money than they know how to waste.
Exactly. And with no accountability. And so, who's kind of running the show? That might be behind what the Democratic Party leadership is saying and calling for the resignation of the governor. It is just a very confusing kind of situation right now. And the Republican leaders in both houses of the legislature and now with the executive branch, with a governor that was elected as a Democrat but has switched parties and is now a Republican, I think it's incumbent upon them to really take this, seriously and start to not just talk about waste, fraud, and abuse, but starting to do some things to correct it. I would think that would be the expectation that most voters would have.
One of the things that's being cited is how little time the governor spends in the Capitol. We know he doesn't live in the governor's mansion. Effectively, I guess he lives at his resort and commutes in now and then. And we're hearing that maybe he's spent 29, 30 days in the state capitol so far, and here we are.
In his totality of his governorship, he's only spent 29 or 30 days.
I think the quote was for this year.
For this year.
But it's mid-June. But even if the number is 100 days, we're at 165 days or whatever for 2018, and 60 of those were in a legislative session, in which Delegate Jason Barrett tells us the governor was rarely there in the Capitol. And I wonder how much of this is traced back to that.
I don't know about you, but I, as a voter, regardless of their party, this is not about partisan. This is politics. When you elect a governor of a state, I think that's supposed to be a full-time job. I think
it is. It's not part-time like the legislature. That's a round-the-clock job.
I mean, I would think that if you were governor or I were governor, I'm going to get there at 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to work at least till 5 o'clock. I'm going to work full-time. I'm getting paid a full-time salary. I have a full-time responsibility. That's outrageous that he's treating this as a part-time job.
We'll get more into that after the 8:31 news break. Let's say good morning right now to our intern, Siobhan Hunter. Good morning, Siobhan.
Good morning.
So, are you learning a lot today, Siobhan?
Siobhan had a big morning already.
She did. How's that?
It was a long
There were some car issues at the house, so there had to be a little bit of musical car chairs here, Siobhan.
I woke up at 5:30 this morning and drove my mom to Winchester and then drove back, and now I'm here, and then I have to get her after.
See?
Nice.
Wouldn't that be responsible?
And she's a good daughter, too.
Very good daughter.
She's a good intern. She's a good daughter.
We talked about this yesterday, and how is Siobhan going to handle this? Because, driving to Winchester, driving back, going back to Winchester again, that's 2 hours of driving.
That's a lot of time.
It's a lot of driving.
She's got to go back again after the show or sometime today and pick up her mom. But that's what families do, though,
It
Rob.
is what you do.
That's just what families do. We've had car issues in our family. You probably have as well. One car doesn't start or whatever it might be. Someone
Hit
gets
by a deer?
That's just what That's happened a few times.
Rear-ended by someone texting on their phone,
Sure.
not paying attention.
There's the story of my life.
I saw that yesterday on I-70. I'm in the left lane doing 1,006 miles an hour, and there goes I'm not sure what age this kid was, but he was young. He goes flying by in the right lane with his head down, texting into his phone while speeding along on I-70. And I thought, there's going to be an ambulance somewhere down the road for this kid at some point along the way, or the person he ends up plowing into.
I turned on my Facebook the other day, and one of these banner ads or whatever just kind of popped up on the first news feed. And I think it said, if you're driving, pull over right now. Something like that, So if you happen to be Facebooking while you were driving and saw that was the message.
And you saw it. And speaking of Facebook, you can catch a replay of our show by going to Facebook, clicking the link, and it'll get you to our audio on Talk Radio WRNR, our website. You can also get a video replay of the show about noon each day on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and enter in WRNR TV, and then look for today's date and Rob and Dave show. And also, yesterday, Siobhan, while I was looking, she appeared to be furiously focused on her computer screen. And I looked, and I wonder what she's doing in there. And she said, I was setting up your Instagram account. So how do you find us on Instagram now, Siobhan?
It's EPT_Rob and Dave.
So just like our Twitter handle, which you can also follow us on Twitter too. Siobhan is handling all of our social media stuff because as our intern this year, and this is her major in school, this is the perfect match. So of all the places in the world she could have gone, Dave, for her internship, she came here to this show for it.
And I would imagine when she graduates, she's going to be in demand for a job, because what we're finding now is the ability to advertise and promote your product or your service on social media platforms, and even to do political campaigns, is really quite amazing. And the way that you can target audiences, right, Siobhan?
Yeah.
And so it's a lot more complicated than one would think. I think that social media advertising is probably now where maybe radio was back in the 40s, or TV in the late 50s, early 60s, where everyone was trying to figure it out. Advertising up until that point in time was really just print ads in magazines and newspapers. And then when the electronic came along, with radio first and then television, and now with social media, trying to figure out how to best use that to target audiences and to sell your product or sell your service. So her major in social media is a lot more complicated than just sending texts and emails.
I agree.
And I think Siobhan probably will get so much experience and exposure from this summer with us. There's no doubt in my mind, Dave, probably we will be acting as agents and getting a cut of her future income in perpetuity.
Oh, she's going to go back to school, and they're going to say, well, Siobhan, how'd you spend your summer? And she's going to say something like, I spent it with two middle-aged guys.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Who are stuck in the dark ages. It was challenging. Let me tell you, the whole thing was very challenging.
Instagram, what is that, like a cracker? Instagram crackers? What is that? 8:31, our news break is coming up next. And then Mike Carl, Jason Barrett, and John Doyle join us.
Is just a memory written on my brow, and there's nothing.
CBS News special report. The White House has just announced long-expected 25% tariffs on hundreds of products from China. CBS's Ben Tracy is in Beijing.
These are tariffs that the White House had rolled out a couple of months ago, and now they will actually take effect. There was some talk between the United States and China in the last couple of weeks, trying to avoid this kind of thing. They were going to try to come to some agreement on trade, and perhaps China trying to close the trade deficit with the United States. But it appears that the Trump administration now is going to move forward with these tariffs.
China says it'll immediately match the $50 billion U.S. tariffs product by product. The president says China's been unfair to U.S. companies for a long time, and he'll add to his list if China does retaliate. CBS News business analyst Jill Schlesinger on the most vulnerable U.S. industries.
If you are somebody who works at a big soybean farming company, that could be a problem. If you are Boeing, you are concerned about this.
CBS News special report. I'm Peter King.
Now your local news from Talk Radio WRNR. Both the Berkeley County Sheriff's Department and Spring Mills High School are mourning the loss of one of their own. Deputy Joaquin Moore, a school resource officer at Spring Mills, was killed yesterday in a motorcycle crash near Martinsburg. He was off duty at the time. Authorities are still investigating the crash. Moore had been with the Sheriff's Department for 4.5 years. He was 30 years old. He bolted from Pennsylvania, where he's on parole, but didn't put up a fight when police found him in Martinsburg. On Wednesday, 62-year-old Frederick Hilliard was arrested at the Martinsburg Union Rescue Mission on West King Street. Before he got out, he'd been behind bars for nearly 40 years for raping multiple people, including minors. The Martinsburg Veterans Affairs Medical Centers announced that its Community Living Center received 4 stars in its annual performance rating. Director Timothy Cook said the center's employees are committed to quality and the safety and care of their patients. I'm Adam Boardman, Talk Radio WRNR News.
Eastern Panhandle weather heading into a nice summery type weekend. We've got lots of high pressure that'll be keeping control of the weather here for us, not only for today and tomorrow, but right on through Sunday into Monday as well. Temperatures will be comfortably warm for today, increasingly muggy tomorrow, and then hot and sticky for Sunday and really steamy on Monday as that high pressure draws up lots of southerly air and lots of tropical type conditions at that point. Today, our less humid 82 degrees forecast high, plenty of sun, light winds. Tonight's low back down to about 60 degrees or so. Tomorrow, mostly sunny skies, the high temperature back in the mid-80s. Hot on Sunday with a high near 92. I'm Bob Kukin, Talk Radio WRNR.
The Honda 4th of July sales event has brilliant deals on our most popular vehicles, like the Civic, Fit, and Pilot. It's a reason to celebrate across the country, from the Liberty Bell to Hollywood, and even back up to Niagara Falls. So come discover the 2018 KBB.com Best Overall Brand during the Honda 4th of July sales event, now at your Honda dealer.
Miller Honda, south of Winchester, home of the lifetime powertrain warranty. www.mymillerhonda.com.
Based on 2018 brand image awards from Kelley Blue Book, visit kbb.com for more information.
Downtown Martinsburg is the place to be for the Fridays at 5 summer concert series from June 1st through August 31st. Enjoy great music and fun with well-known musicians, bands, and Martinsburg artists that will liven up your spirits at the town square. Concerts begin at 5 p.m. and usually last until 7. Enjoy great music while visiting Martinsburg's Farmers Market, housed on East King Street, where you're able to enjoy fresh fruits and veggies, chicken and pork, and a lot more. Pets are allowed in the square during the concerts, provided they're on a 6-foot leash or less. For the full concert summer series lineup, go to mainstreetmartinsburg.com.
Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of sport.
We welcome you in to Walsh University. We are in North Canton, Ohio. Turning out to be a beautiful day here in Cleveland, Mississippi. We had rain over. We welcome you back to Hilton Head High School in Hilton Head, South Carolina. Back once again here at Doubleday Field in Cooperstown, New York.
Local sports coverage with Talk Radio WRNR's Matt Miller. There when you can't be.
Hi, honey.
Where are you?
I've been in line at the post office for the last 30 minutes.
Why are you at the post office? It'll take you all day.
Where else do I go to ship my packages or drop FedEx off at?
Honey, going postal is way faster, has less lines, and friendly service.
Where's going postal?
It's right in the Common Shopping Center in Martinsburg. They'll ship your packages quickly, and you can avoid the lines.
Going postal should be your first choice for all your shipping needs. Going postal, the Commons, Martinsburg. We're talking with Joe Ferretti of Hammer, Ferretti, and Schiavone. Joe, how do you hire a personal injury attorney?
Rob, we believe you should look for an attorney who has a good reputation and the results to match. Ask around. We have a history of success representing folks who live here. You'll be convinced that my law firm is the one to handle your personal injury claim. Call Hammer, Ferretti, and Schiavone at 264-8505 for a free review of your case. Or contact us online at hfslawyers.com. At Hammer, Ferretti, and Schiavone, reputation and results matter.
Dive dip, you might break your hip to the sound that's legit. I come to make a hit. I usually bust scratches for my brother see I'm smooth, but I decided to get wrecked on this groove.
Welcome back to the program, Eastern Panhandle Talk with Rob and Dave, and the Friday show with a full room brought to you in this segment by Farmers and Mechanics Insurance Companies. When it comes to your home, auto, farm, or business, we're trusted, reliable, and experienced at Farmers and Mechanics Insurance Companies. Davey, good morning once again to you.
Good morning to you.
And our room full of crew here.
I would call them other names besides the crew.
At least one of them.
Yeah.
Delegate Jason Barrett, JB.
Good morning, guys. I hope I'm not that one, but I have a feeling I probably am.
You may have incurred the wrath of one David Welch for some off-air comments. Nevertheless, former tax commissioner
He's just not a very nice person. Right?
Mike Caryl.
That's the thing.
Hello, Michael.
Good morning. And I just off-air tried to take the heat off of Jason. I think it worked.
Nice.
Yeah.
And former delegate, he'd like to be one again, John Doyle. JD?
Good morning, all.
Why don't I hear your microphone?
Oh, I said good morning, all.
Yeah, you're actually not, your microphone's not picking up, so.
I can hear it in my earphones.
Can you really?
Why can you not hear it in your earphones?
I don't know.
Can anyone else hear it in their earphones?
No.
No.
No. Well, I don't know. If you've cut me off, that's the way it goes.
John unmiked at the moment. Your mic cut out for whatever reason. We'll deal with that in a moment. So whenever you have to talk, you'll just have to share a microphone at this time. So one way or the other, we're going to have to get that between the two, or maybe you and David.
Good morning, all.
There you go. That I heard. I'm not sure. Every once in a while, your microphone cuts out, and I'm not sure why. But our engineer is in today.
Is that why you put me in the seat you always put me in?
I think it was the last time we had someone sitting here. I thought it worked.
Yeah,
fine.
it's only when John's here.
Yeah, so when Sammy was here, it worked fine, didn't it?
It did.
You could hear Sammy, couldn't you, Mike?
Yeah, through the headset.
Yeah, there you go.
As much as he may not have wanted to.
Well, that's true.
He did hear it.
That's true too. My daughter Laura was not happy with Sammy, by the way, when she made some comment to you about a candy bar. Do you remember that? You need to go eat your Snickers bars or something like that. She thought that you were maligned. And she stood up for you.
Well, tell her I appreciate the defense and the concern. I'm so used to shots like that. I don't even remember.
And no matter what you think of me, the rest of my family are not rhinos, so you can be proud of all of them.
Well, God bless them all.
If somebody wants to give me a Snickers bar, I'm not going to be upset.
Well, that's a good point. That's a very good point. I love it when Sammy and Mike get into it together, though. They just he doesn't really quite know what to do with her when she kind of like goes on a Sammy rant with him, and he looks at her like, I want to argue with this woman, but I want to be polite about it. Different than like if he disagrees with Jason or me or even you, he doesn't care about being polite. So this kind of an interesting dynamic.
I think you've characterized that correctly. I mean, she's a nice, very nice young lady, and how she has these very horrible ideas.
And she thinks the same of you, I'm sure. A nice man with horrible ideas.
It's something about the old timers. That was part of that candy bar.
Oh, that might have been.
The Snickers. It's from those commercials where people are kind of acting out of character, and they're grumpy and they're upset, and they need a Snickers bar to calm down.
Oh, okay.
Well, this is the Friday morning political show, and we prove every Friday here to all the people in the Eastern Panhandle that men and women of different points of view can gather around the table, kind of like a kitchen table, and disagree without being disagreeable. You agree with that?
Yeah.
Well, we don't yell at each other most of the time.
Not on air.
Not on air. Let's start with this morning. I know that Rob's trying to fix your microphone. There were so many things that occurred this week, both at the state and the national level. I hardly even know where to begin. Mike, let's have you start this out. What did you come in today with your number one issue? And I'll give Jason a second shot at this.
And these events aren't completely unrelated. The peace talks, denuclearization agenda at the beginning of the week with North Korea, and at the end of the week, Trump's putting the hammer down or making official a certain level of tariffs on Chinese imports, and clearly China was. In the middle of the week, they said China won because of the way that the perceived direction of the North Korean, peace talk, so to speak. And now, so it's all there's a lot of moving parts, and there a lot of them, or at least the international aspects, are related.
I think this is John. For those not watching on television, I think the North Korean peace agreement has even fewer safeguards in it than the agreement with Iran that President Trump trashed.
Well, that's what you'd expect from John and his party, but the truth is that. As the Secretary of State confirmed yesterday, none of the sanctions come off until there's very discernible and point of no return, in effect, progress on the denuclearization of North Korea. So the they can't apologize enough for the Iran deal. The Iran deal was a horrible thing, and I'm telling you, when whatever it becomes the real, agreement, something that's takes the status of a treaty, because we will have to do something for North Korea in terms of security as well as trade. I guarantee you the president will take that to the Senate for ratification, and it will be ratified. Unlike the Iran deal, which would never have been ratified in a million years.
To me, it seems like, and I'm certainly not a foreign affairs expert, but just as an American watching all of this go on, and Rob and I talked about this on Tuesday and Wednesday, I think, a little bit. It seems to me that if you've got this rogue nation that is this awful nation, this awful dictator.
Which one are we talking about, North Korea or Iran?
North Korea.
Okay.
But but they have something that Iran doesn't have, and that's the capability within a year to put a nuclear missile anywhere in the United States. And that's by every account, every American account. So Donald Trump, regardless of what you think about him and regardless of how we think of things in a partisan way, sitting down and talking for a day and trying to take a first step so that awful thing doesn't happen in the future, I think needs to be appreciated, I would think, by all Americans as a good thing. If we're talking, then quite possibly we're not bombing one another. Having said that, I don't think that the questions that the Democratic opposition are asking, and even some Republicans are asking, even John alluded to it in his last comment, I think they're fair questions. I think they're questions that need to be asked. I think that at the end, that it's the process working, I would think. This is a sit down with, had this been Hillary Clinton or any other Democrat going and having a conference with Kim, I would imagine that the Republicans, when that president got home, would be asking these same kinds of questions. And they're fair questions and they're right questions, ultimately to get to verification. We want denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula. There has to be verification. We have to make sure we're not giving up too much to get what we need. All of that matters. So I think it's kind of a healthy process. This has been a good week for Trump, I would think, but it's been a good week for America as it relates to taking the first necessary steps to try and fix this problem. And I believe I speak for the majority of Americans.
I absolutely agree with every word you said, but I want to add that the president has questions too. In other words, it is part of the total when was the last time a president had an hour-long press conference on anything, let alone something this critical? With the international media included, he said, 6 months from now, I may come back and say, I was wrong. This isn't heading where it needs to be. So I agree that the questions are legitimate. They are inherent. So we know the Iran deal was a giveaway and horrible. This one is just starting.
And I think some of the problem that a lot of people have, and I don't think it's just Democrats, like you said, David. I think there's some Republicans asking the questions because, the president tweets after the meeting. He's come back to the United States, and he acts like the whole controversy is over, that he has completely solved the problem. And that's what his tweets indicate.
Just like Neville Chamberlain after he talked with Hitler in Munich.
And David, I think that you bring up a good point. What if this would have been Hillary Clinton or Obama? Had they saluted a North Korean general, what do you think the other side would be saying at this point? And now you have the North Koreans using this as propaganda, to really bring some validity to them on the national stage. And I think kind of the worst part about this, the reason that a lot of people have a sour taste in their mouth after this is because he left the Allies early. He met with them very briefly, and then went to Singapore to meet with Kim. And he was, that relationship with our allies totally went downhill very quickly because of the way he operates. And then he goes and he sucks up to Kim. And I think that's where a lot of Americans really have a problem with this right now.
The man in the street doesn't have any problem with the prospect of peace and denuclearization. Now, all this other stuff is purely partisan that Jason just spewed out. The Neville Chamberlain business, that's John Kerry. Peace in our time. That was John Kerry coming back. Trump is, absolutely. We've said 100 times. I would pay money to avoid being in a room with him. He's an obnoxious person, but he is doing the things that haven't been done to bring a more peaceful Asian coast, and that will all the stuff about the allies. The allies are with us. They have taken advantage of us on trade. We're responding to that. It's all part of the deal making, and you can pick one thing. At this point it went the wrong way. Well, there's pluses and minuses all over the place, and that's what making deals is about.
I never pegged you, Mike, for a protectionist Republican in terms of international trade.
If Larry Kudlow can see the merit of threat of tariffs and the imposition of tariffs in the total context, then the free trade, these theoretician free traders, are as wrong as a protectionist point of view.
But don't you think, though, in the House of Representatives, the majority of Republicans, they're not going to like this tariff business of the president's? I wouldn't.
Well,
I mean, it's almost anti-Republican, isn't it?
It's not like it's open-ended. I mean, they for instance, the tariffs today are on significantly fewer categories of goods than was originally discussed. It's all a negotiation. And to say tariffs are horrible, it's a tax. It's just a tax on goods for sure, and you're against that in principle. But they have their place in the short run, and that's all we're talking about is the short run. If in fact Trump said, let's get rid of them completely on all sides. So let's have free trade.
Make the tie-in then between the summit with Kim and your issue on free trade, because you kind of lost me there a little bit. Where's the tie-in?
This theory,
or is this just all a campaign speech for Donald Trump?
It's not a campaign speech for Donald Trump. It's the way that deals are made. We need the Chinese to stay into the sanctions, trade sanctions against North Korea, so we can't push them too far, and Trump knows this, Pompeo knows this, Bolton knows this. I'm very confident that whatever outlandish or exaggerated statements that Donald Trump makes, which is his his MO, that with Pompeo and Bolton, he's not going to give away the store at all to North Korea. At the same time, with Larry Kudlow, a recognized free trader, capitalism favoring, spokesperson, we're not going to be in a protectionist mode to our detriment. It's only a tool to get to where we want to be.
I love listening to Republicans argue with each other.
Democrats never argue with each other, John.
Well, yeah, and I mean, so those congressional candidates that are out doing commercials and saying they'll never vote for Nancy Pelosi, that's not an argument in the Democratic Party, John. That was kind of a cheap shot, really, because.
Yes, it was a cheap shot, and it was fun. Yes, we do argue with each other, and I didn't say we didn't. I just said I liked hearing you all.
Let me ask you this question. Do you become a protectionist if you're trading with a country that's leveling tariffs on your products and you're not leveling tariffs on theirs? That makes you a protectionist to respond in kind? To try to even out the playing field a little bit?
Actually, I need to agree, at least in part, with Mike Caryl on this. If the idea of putting a tariff on is designed to get the attention of a country that is putting a tariff on your party, fine. As long as the goal is to get them to the table and negotiate a fair arrangement between the two countries. I will say this, though. Some of these countries that President Trump is saying are eating our lunch, in fact, we have overall trade surpluses with them
when you count
factor in
services.
services.
Yeah.
And let's face it, we are a country that to a very great extent exports services.
But the trade deficit, now that's a measure, but it's not the ultimate goal of free trade. I mean, you can have a trade deficit if it's free and fair. There's nothing wrong with that. So, and the fact, and John, I mean, you're right about the services. That when you add that in, then we actually have a trade surplus, with Canada. But I'm glad John recognized. I knew he knew this all along. He just finally expressed it.
This is not
a reasonable point of view about the role of these pluses and minuses in a negotiation.
Someone brought to my attention yesterday that it seems to them anyway, this is a friend's point of view, it might have been said by one of the pundits, I didn't hear it, and that is that in many cases the countries are Canada and other countries where these tariffs are being applied are actually targeting their retaliation back to swing states that Trump might carried last time in the election. Talk about election meddling, right? And my response to that is that's actually pretty smart of them to do when you think of it. If you're going to do it, you might as well do it in a way that might have the most effect.
Well, that was
which is part of the negotiation, because in a negotiation,
right,
both sides get to negotiate.
What goods? Because there's goods are specific to certain states.
So Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania are really going to take it in the chin, I would imagine.
Well, China's first reaction was in that area. On some of it was on agricultural products
and whiskey from Kentucky and Tennessee.
How about that, Mitch McConnell?
So in the end, so John and Mike think, and you might be right, that at the end of the day, on the tariff issue, that it's all going to be worked out, and all this is just a negotiating tool to bring other countries to the table to work it out in a fair kind of way.
That's the purpose of these threats and so forth.
Well, and I think that's a great purpose. I think that most people would agree that that's the way this ought to work. But why do you have to go around the world acting like a child to do it? Why can't you be a statesman?
When you figure that part out, we'll all be blessed.
Well,
I
think you're right.
That kind of behavior can't be defended most of the time. Even Mike Caryl doesn't defend Trump's behavior.
Yeah, because he's in Canada now. They're talking about what you all just talked about, how imposing these tariffs in certain swing states, that's not good for the country. I don't care what political party benefits from that, but it's because the president can't go have a normal conversation as the head of a country speaking with another one to try to work out a deal. He has to go be a bully. He has to go make threats, and then he wants to come back to the table and tell everybody he's this great negotiator. So if he would just go act like a statesman instead of a child, I think that he would have a lot more public support. I think he'd be a lot more successful.
He didn't get elected by campaigning as a statesman, though, did he?
No.
Well, getting elected and serving are two different things.
Absolutely, but not in his mind.
But he hadn't changed his style at all.
No.
In other words, he didn't have a phony persona to get elected, and then he's turned into, and then he's relaxed and shown his real self. To the extent I agree with the criticism of his style, and that's all it is. I mean, the substance, the eye on the ball, the objectives are absolutely to be supported as far as I'm concerned. But if to the extent that's legitimate, then what's that say about the other party that they lost to a guy who's that horrible?
Well, I'm not going to defend our candidate. I would be the first to agree that the Democrats did not nominate the right person. I think that the Democratic Party nationally is going through a reality check, I hope, and really going back to their roots where they stood up for working families and what the Democratic Party used to stand for. I hope that's where we get back to. But I'm not going to defend Hillary Clinton or any of the National Democrats at this point.
And I think that brings in kind of a whole new topic here, too. When you look at the week that Donald Trump had with North Korea, with the tariffs, with the G7 that happened last weekend meeting in Canada, and you put all of that together, and you start to look at what does all of this mean, if anything, nationally in the midterm elections. 4 or 5 months ago, we were talking about a blue wave, meaning a Democratic wave was going to sweep the country and make it a Democratic majority in the House, maybe the Senate. It was going to be huge. It doesn't seem that huge anymore, and I'm wondering why. Is it because the Democrats are failing to do what Jason's advising them to do, which is to talk about real issues and what's relevant and get back to your roots and talk about what's relevant to real Americans? Or is it because Donald Trump's actually doing things such as meeting with Kim, making a more fair trade balance with other countries? Is that helping him? Is he getting a bump in numbers around the country? And is there really a blue wave about to happen in November? Kind of an interesting topic, because all of these issues go into the pot and get mixed up, and ultimately they matter at the ballot box.
That's the point. It's a combination of things. If you wanted to pick out a single thing that has caused the rise in Trump's poll numbers, so to speak, it's the tax cut and what people are experiencing in their pay, but the whole, ultimately it's the whole combination of everything, including the Democrats' failure to come forward with something that resonates with the man in the street.
It's amazing that Donald Trump's favorable and unfavorable numbers right now are higher than Obama's were at this juncture of his presidency, which would have been 2010, right? Would have been June of 2010.
Of course, that's when Obama was.
Well, that's when the Tea Party was forming,
and he was doing his Obamacare program.
This segment of our program brought to you this morning by L.A. Roberts Jewelers, located in downtown Martinsburg. Committed to excellence in quality design and craftsmanship. 304-263-6540 and 304-263-6586. You texters out there, we'll put you on the air, get your point through, and you can defend it on the phone if you like. This is Talk Radio WRNR Martinsburg. It's 9 o'clock. The news is next.
Is CBS News on the Hour, sponsored by Zoom Video Conferencing.
I'm Peter King. The Trump administration has just announced that expected new tariffs on imported goods from China are going into effect. Let's go live to White House correspondent Stephen Portnoy.
The action targets $50 billion in Chinese goods, mainly those in the high-tech ago, the president told Fox News it's retaliation for Chinese theft of American technology.
We have the great brain power in Silicon Valley. And China and others steal those secrets, and we're going to protect those secrets. Those are crown jewels for this country.
The president shrugs off concerns of a growing trade war, even as Beijing says the action will harm both parties. China says retaliatory measures targeting U.S. agriculture and other key sectors are coming. Peter.
President Trump's former campaign chair is due in a Washington courtroom in about an hour. Special counsel Robert Mueller has filed witness tampering charges against Paul Manafort. In connection with the Russia investigation, Manafort's already been indicted on several other charges. He's expected to ask the judge not to revoke his bail. Afghan officials say the terrorist considered responsible for ordering the 2012 attack that nearly killed Nobel Prize winner Malala Yousafzai has been killed in a U.S. drone strike. CBS's David Martin says there's no confirmation from the Pentagon.
The U.S. usually goes through a fairly elaborate procedure before it finally declares somebody dead, but it is clear that he was the target, and as far as the Afghan Defense Ministry is concerned, he was killed.
Taliban chief Mullah Fazlullah was also responsible for an attack that killed 151 people, mostly children, at a Pakistani school. 6 people are hospitalized after a Daytona Beach roller coaster car derailed last night.
We just hear a big loud boom and we just take off running.
Everybody started screaming and we ran over there and saw the cart dangling.
2 people fell more than 30 feet from the car. The roller coaster was shut down for several safety problems last year. A nightmare for thousands of flyers at Charlotte's Douglas International Airport. Here's CBS's Jim Krasula.
Thousands of travelers, including Rowan Grisez, were stranded overnight at the Charlotte, North Carolina airport after PSA Airlines, flying under the name American Eagle, canceled 275 flights Thursday night.
It's been pretty chaotic so far, sort of bouncing between flights, trying to figure out where we're going. Finally decided we were just going to drive.
He's driving 8 hours home to Ohio. Many of the canceled flights were at the Charlotte airport, which is one of the nation's busiest. American Eagle does not expect its flights to resume before before 6 p.m. today. Jim Crisula, CBS News.
Ahead of the opening bell, S&P futures are down 14. This is CBS News.
Zoom video conferencing, featuring video and audio clarity with screen sharing. Free accounts are available at zoom.us. That's zoom.us. Zoom video conferencing.
Do you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS? Are you facing potential wage garnishments, levies, or tax liens? With a call to the Attorney's Tax Relief Helpline, you can get the tax help you need through special programs that can reduce your liability by thousands of dollars. Pick up your mobile phone and dial **1234. Yes, that's right. Pick up your mobile phone and dial **1234. Once you've qualified and enrolled, the IRS will stop all collection activities against you. Attorney's Tax Relief has been helping consumers reduce their debt and are trusted and accredited by the Better Business Bureau. Again, on your mobile phone, dial **1234. That's **1234. If you owe the IRS $10,000 or more, call Attorney's Tax Relief now and get free information and to see if you qualify. You can fix this, but don't wait any longer. Pick up your mobile phone and dial *1234. That's *1234.
Now your local news from Talk Radio WRNR. Both the Berkeley County Sheriff's Department and Spring Mills High School are mourning the loss of one of their own. Deputy Joaquin Moore, a school resource officer at Spring Mills, was killed yesterday in a motorcycle crash near Martinsburg. He was off duty at the time. Authorities are still investigating the crash. Moore had been with the Sheriff's Department for 4.5 years. He was 30 years old. Appeal denied, and that's the end of the case for a man who killed a Hedgesville woman with whom he'd once lived. James Love, who's from North Carolina, was found guilty 4 years ago of murdering Tracy McCauley while he was robbing her and with his son in the house. He was given life with the possibility of parole, plus 32 to 40 years for other charges. Governor Jim Justice yesterday asked for and received the resignation of State Commerce Secretary Woody Thrasher. The governor said Thrasher told him recent media attention had distracted from economic development and business opportunities. I'm Adam Boardman, Talk Radio WRNR News.
Eastern Panhandle weather heading into a nice summery type weekend. We've got lots of high pressure that'll be keeping control of the weather here for us, not only for today and tomorrow, but right on through Sunday into Monday as well. Temperatures will be comfortably warm for today, increasingly muggy tomorrow, and then hot and sticky for Sunday and really steamy on Monday as that high pressure draws up lots of southerly air and lots of tropical type conditions at that point. Today, a less humid 82 degrees forecast high, plenty of sun, light winds. Tonight's low back down to about 60 degrees or so. Tomorrow, mostly sunny skies, the high temperature back in the mid-80s. Hot on Sunday with a high near 92. I'm Bob Kukin, Talk Radio WRNR.
With 4 new car dealerships and 4 used car dealerships in 3 states, Parsons is the largest used car and fastest growing new car dealer in the tri-state area. Take Parsons Ford with huge savings on hundreds of new Fords, financing from 0%, Parsons' goal of financing for all, and Parsons' famous above market trade-in allowances that help make Parsons #1 for used cars too. See why so many won't buy anywhere but Parsons Ford in Martinsburg. We became #1 by making you #1 first. Parsons.
The future doesn't wait. Why should you? Blue Ridge Community and Technical College offers over 50 degree and certificate programs in education, IT, culinary arts, engineering, and so much more. Small class sizes, flexible schedules with evening and online classes, with affordable tuition, plus financial aid is available to those who qualify. Now you can go to college. Visit us online at blueridgectc.edu. That's blueridgectc.edu. Stop waiting and enroll today.
With 4 new car dealerships and 4 used car dealerships in 3 states, Parsons is the largest used car and fastest growing new car dealer in the tri-state area. Take Parsons Ford with huge savings on hundreds of new Fords, financing from 0%, Parsons' goal of financing for all, and Parsons' famous above market trade-in allowances that help make Parsons #1 for used cars too. See why so many won't buy anywhere but Parsons Ford in Martinsburg. We became #1 by making you #1 first. Parsons.
Welcome back to the program, Eastern Panhandle Talk, the Friday edition with Rob and Dave, Jason Barrett, Mike Caryl, and John Doyle, whose microphone now works.
Yay.
Brought to you
I don't have to share my toy anymore.
Brought to you in this segment by the Brown Funeral Homes and Cremations, Robert Fields and Sons, a family-owned full-service funeral home proudly serving our area since 1880. Just as we went on the air, I managed to break the tripod that holds our camera. So if you are looking at their TV picture or later on try to watch on YouTube, you'll notice a different camera angle. That is entirely my fault for breaking the tripod. Literally with brute strength, Jason Barrett, I tried to adjust the camera angle that we had, and I snapped it right out of its place.
I'm going to do the rest of the show standing up just so I can be seen a little bit better.
Rob, I've wondered how you've controlled that brute strength of yours, and I understand how it, one time it finally got out of control.
It did.
I do understand.
Me and Dr. Banner have a lot in common. Don't get me angry, Jason Barrett. At the same time that was happening, John Doyle's microphone stopped working before it actually started working. So I was putting out two fires at once, one self-created, and the other one, as it turns out, with all the complications of the tech world, just simply was a loose mic cable. Problem solved. John's back. John, you now have your own microphone.
Gee, thank you.
And overwhelmingly, the response is coming in from the public. Shut his microphone off again. So.
I don't know if that means because they don't want John to have his microphone or because he took Welch's microphone. I'm not sure the reason.
It could be divided.
Barrett off the air, now on the air. Again, another slam, unprovoked, at David Welch.
I'm so immune to it.
What have you done to deserve this lack of love?
I don't know.
Our intern is Savon Hutter. Sherry Dieter Davis is our producer, and our telephone number is 304-263-6540 or 304-263-6586, and that is the WVU Medicine Berkeley Medical Center talk line, where right now we find Pat Murphy. Pat, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Good morning. Thank you.
What's on your mind?
Well, Jason earlier mentioned about the working people and the Democrats, but I was reading today's journal, and on the front page it's talking about the Mark funding, and I remembered that being an issue back in the 80s. I was a freshman. John there was also a freshman. Tom Steptoe was our leader. He was in his second term, but the advice we had was freshmen are to be seen and not heard. And so I was very reluctant to speak, but Tom told us we're each going to give a speech about the Mark Twain funding. I think Bradley Nash was mayor of Harper's Ferry. I remember the bow ties and everything. So we were trying to get money. Meanwhile, Hardy County was getting money for the Chicken Railroad, and we were trying to save our Mark Twain service. And so we each got up and gave a speech. I remember that was one of only 2 times my freshman session. But it's just, back then you were dealing with hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now you're dealing with a couple million. But it's the same issue, deja vu, as Yogi Berra always said.
Yeah, actually what had happened was we came to an agreement to kind of throw the House into an uproar. I referred to it as Pat Murphy and me being privates, two buck privates being led by a corporal, the corporal being Tom Steptoe, who later became a circuit judge. And each one of us was assigned an amendment to the budget bill.
I remember that.
And so Chuck Poland, who was the chair of the House Finance Committee, had to get up each time and explain why. Where we had proposed to get the money had to stay where it was. And the leadership did not like this at all. And this was in 1983, our first year. What happened the next year was the majority whip at the time, Bill Wooten from Raleigh County, came to us and said, guys, if you shut up, you'll get your money this year. So in 1984, we got the first state subsidy for the Mark Twain. It was either $200,000 or $300,000. I don't remember. Not as much as the 1.5 they got this year, which is on a one-time basis. That was permanent and is still there in a different form. We got the $200,000, and later I think it might have been increased to $300,000. I'm not sure. But what happened is it stayed for several years, and then there was an agreement between West Virginia and Maryland. And I think this was Maryland's idea, is that West Virginia, rather than give a subsidy, would take over the responsibility for maintaining and expanding the facilities in West Virginia. And at the time, for example, Duffields, there was no parking lot at all. We ended up putting in a big asphalt parking lot, and then later a pavilion that the riders could stand under when waiting for the train when it was raining. And there were a number of changes made at the Martinsburg station. And at any rate, this actual subsidy is still there, but again in a different form. And I've heard, some of the current members, not Jason, but some of the current members saying that this year was the first time ever. Oh, no. The first time was in 1984, and it was because of Tom Steptoe, Pat Murphy, me, and State Senator Sandra Lucht, who helped us out in the Senate. And it's all because we were willing to take on the leadership of our own party to do that.
Well, John, for an old fart, your memory's pretty good. But I just remember I always referred to the leadership of Marion Shiflett, and Wooten was right. He was majority whip and everything. They were the old silverbacks, and we young guerrillas had to watch how we behaved ourselves around them. But that's it. I just was interesting to see the same issues being faced again, and we'd be losing. I mean, we won't lose those people moving out, I don't think, but they'd have to commute to Brunswick, and it's a good income level of people to be served. To be having
Pat,
on our tax rolls.
Yeah, Pat, whatever income level, it would be seriously unfair to them to have thought a few years ago, if I move to Jefferson County or Berkeley County, there's this train service I can rely on, and then all of a sudden it gets pulled out from under them. That would just be flat out wrong.
Yeah. Well, thank you for hearing me out there. I just thought it was interesting to see it reoccurring again.
Thank you.
Hey, Pat, thanks for the call.
Yeah, thank you all. Bye-bye.
Hey, what came out of the meeting yesterday, John, in regards to continued funding for the MARC train?
Well, it was a very interesting meeting. All the Berkeley County commissioners, all the Jefferson County commissioners were there. Tom Smith, the Secretary of Transportation, was there with some of his staff people, and several of the current legislators were there. Craig Blair called in. There had been some indication earlier that the state might be able to come up with at least the 1.5 million now is one time, 1 year only, and that's it. There had been some indication that maybe not only could that be made permanent, but it might be made higher. Craig Blair said that in his opinion, that the most we could come up with is $500,000. I don't think that now. Tom Smith said Maryland is solid on 3.2 million. Craig Blair said he thinks maybe Maryland can be negotiated down, and maybe Craig's right. I hope he is, to maybe 2.5 or even 2.2. I'm hoping that's the case. But even with that, if the state only comes up with 500,000, I don't see how we can get Berkeley County, Jefferson County, and the municipalities to come up with the difference. Now, my personal view is that the state needs to come up with whatever amount there is. And now, Craig and everybody else said we can't do that without raising taxes. Well, I think if we double the severance tax on natural gas, we can do this and give the teachers and state employees a pay raise and do some other things too, like stabilize the Public Employees Insurance Agency.
Go ahead, Mike Carl. I know you're ready to go.
Well, I have a kind of a innocuous question first, and then I want to talk about that severance tax increase. Has the issue of fare increase been part of any of this discussion?
It has, but I think their fares are as high now as they ought to be. They're much higher than the fares when you get on in Maryland, and I just don't think that's fair.
Well, it's a little further out, and there's all these. There's all these. A
little bit higher, certainly, but
yeah.
I don't think as much higher as they are.
Well,
it's what they call the hillbilly tax.
But when
it was based on about 5 years ago.
But when you compare it to the cost and stress of driving in, I'd be willing to, not that I don't obviously do it every day, but it would seem that a small fare increase could be part of closing the gap on money.
But remember also, Mike.
Are you opposed to a fare increase, John?
Yes, because I think they're now paying. When you consider the difference between getting on at Harper's Ferry and getting on at Brunswick, I think the difference is enough right now.
How much is the
terms of
difference?
fairness.
What is the difference? Roughly.
What is it? About a third more, Jason? Something like that.
I'm going to say it's $3 or $4 difference, I think.
Yeah, but I think that's enough.
Round trip.
Do federal government?
Way?
I'm not sure. It's been a few years. The last time I rode, it was like $13 one way from Duffields, I think.
Okay,
which is the closest.
Do
station that I
federal
lived.
employees get the option of some type of mass transit stipend for the train expense?
I know at one time they did, but I don't know if they still do.
I think they still do.
But I want to make a point here, and that is, I think we all benefit from keeping these people out of their cars.
Oh yeah, well Maryland benefits too.
Yes.
So that's why there ought to be a little room to negotiate.
Yeah.
The thing on the severance tax, John, if you manage to get reelected to the House of Delegates,
Not reelected, elected.
Elected. And of course, you haven't mentioned your opponent who was very instrumental currently, along with Senator Blair, in getting at least a stopgap money for this.
Oh, I commend him for that.
Well, good. That's honorable of you. But I'm here to tell you, when we do the vote scoring, EPBA, we're going to triple weight any floor vote on increasing taxes.
Okay.
And a vote for increasing taxes is going to be a triple deficit in your scorecard.
Oh, way to go.
That sounded like a threat to me. Was that a threat?
Yeah, it's intended as a threat.
Laying it down, Mike Carl.
I want
Lay on, McDuff.
I want Jason Barrett to know preliminarily, this isn't official yet, that he came out very well on the EPBA's 2018 scorecard. On our votes, and so we're capable of recognizing good leadership and progressive.
Now, Mike, do you regard losing any money to Barrett in a poker game as a tax levy on you? Do you increase that?
Voluntary. That's my stupidity.
I wanted to make one more point on this, and that is that raising the severance tax is not a tax on West Virginians.
Why not?
That's totally wrong, John.
It is totally right. And because the natural gas produced in West Virginia is consumed almost entirely outside of West Virginia. And so the tax is paid by those who consume the gas, where all the jobs are going to be created in Virginia and Maryland. And the estimates are that over the next couple of years, the production of natural gas is going to at least double in West Virginia.
Mike, why do you disagree with John's logic?
It's wrong. And
why is it wrong?
And here's why. First of all, there is a huge and growing market for natural gas consumed in West Virginia. Second, including in this panhandle, where that's why the pipeline.
But this gas is coming from Pennsylvania.
Second point, then, John, you just led me into it. Gas is a commodity, and when West Virginia gas bears a tax cost, it's less competitive in the commodity marketplace.
Not true in this case. There are half a dozen counties in north central West Virginia that people in the gas industry call the sweet spot of the Marcellus and Utica play. The companies are going to want this gas even if we double their tax.
I think it's John. How can a person of your knowledge and intelligence ignore the fundamentals of economics, the supply and demand, and the higher the cost of a commodity, the less it's going to be purchased. Raising taxes is a best way to kill West Virginia's economy.
I disagree. The best way to improve West Virginia's economy is to put considerably more money into education, and we can't do it if we don't have revenue.
The PEI task force, who has had 21 meetings across the state, they've heard overwhelmingly to fully fund and to fix PEIA that they want to see an increase in the severance tax. And I hear both arguments, but I think that the legislature owes it to those folks and owes it to West Virginia to figure out what the truth is. And I think that the Joint Committee on Finance is going to look into this moving forward and to find out if this is a solution that can work and will work or not. I think that it's important that we get in there and we do our job to find these things out and not just have this political rhetoric back and forth to find out if it does work. Back to the Mark Train, I think the $3.2 million, to say that only $500,000 of that comes from the state and that these local municipalities here in the Eastern Panhandle, whether it be Martinsburg and Shepherdstown or whoever, or the counties, to come up with $2.7 million, I think is going to be asking a lot out of these budgets. And there are a lot of things that this state government pays for in other areas of the state. Other areas of the state where it's losing population every year, that has very little economic development. And here we are in the prospering area of the state, and we have to give serious consideration to the value of this. And I don't think that the $3.2 million in a $4.3 billion budget is really asking a lot.
I don't disagree with that, but the issue where at least John and I have a disagreement is where you get the money for any constructive program that we need. Where I say where we get it from two sources. One is to reduce wasteful spending, like get rid of the State Department of Education as a starter, and secondly is to restructure the government and the tax structure of the state to make us far more competitive. We already spend a huge part of our, relatively huge compared to this country of our limited wealth on public education, and we have horrible results. As I asked Jason at a meeting last week, in addition to raising teachers' pay to a competitive level, what else can we do to improve education? And my answer, as a rhetorical question, is to cut spending and devote it and Jason had a good answer too, which was to give more local control to our education leaders and get the state out of the one size fits all central dominance and all the cost that goes with it.
Michael, when people hear you say I want to get rid of the Department of Education in the state, they interpret that as you want to cut education.
They can interpret it any way they want.
What do you mean by it? Though?
I mean, get rid. We don't need the bureaucracy in Charleston. The state. We don't need a superintendent. We should have a State Department of Education that simply oversees, establishes through objective process, learning outcome, standards, and then enforces them, and that's it. And we, Governor Justice, I know, bring his name up with a little trepidation, but made a point in his inaugural address. He hadn't followed up on it, but that the K through 12 population in the 70s was 40% higher than it is today, and yet the Department of Education was 1/10 of what it is today.
There is some truth in what Mike says. I don't think we should do away with the Department of Education, but it is too big. We could get some savings by reducing the size if we do it carefully. In terms of doing away with it, Mike, every state has a state superintendent of schools, even states that have a whole lot of local control. And I do believe West Virginia needs more local control.
Okay, give the title of the head of the Department of Education with its limited mission that I described, call him the superintendent. That's fine.
Okay.
No problem.
Everybody's happy as we go to the break?
I just looked up, by the way, the fares from Martinsburg to D.C. are $13 one way. From Harper's Ferry and from Duffields, they're $12. And in Brunswick, they're $9. So they go down. And if you get a monthly pass, buy a monthly pass every month, it comes down to about $10 from West Virginia on the average.
Per day?
Per day.
Round trip?
Round trip. No, that would be $20 round
each way.
That's one way, yeah.
Very good.
One way.
Did you look up if there's a federal subsidy by chance?
I did not get that far.
I know there used to be a commuter subsidy, carpooling and trains.
Well, I don't know how it applies to West Virginia.
Tell you what, hold on until we get back,
Okay.
Mike. This segment was brought to you by the law offices of Hemmer, Ferretti, and Schiavone, delivering first-rate service and results for our clients at 927.
It's the Jeep Celebration event at Miller's Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Martinsburg. Stop in now for great deals on a great line of Jeep products. Get $1,000 cash back on a 2019 Jeep Cherokee with financing at 0% for 60 months. How about a new 2019 Cherokee Latitude 4x4, only $219 a month, or a 2018 Jeep Wrangler JK for only $296 a month. Get bonus cash up to $6,000 off a 2018 Renegade, plus $500 trade. Stop by and test drive a Chrysler Pacifica and get free movie passes. It's all at the Jeep Celebration event at Miller's Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, home of the lifetime powertrain warranty on Kelly Island Road, or online at millerschryslerjeep.com. All payments based on approved credit, taxes, tags, and processing fees extra. See dealer for details.
The WVU Medicine Spring Mills office building is now open. This new 3-story, 40,000 square foot facility is conveniently located off Interstate 81, exit 20 at the intersection of US 11 and Campus Drive. The WVU Medicine Spring Mills medical office building features many different offices and services for area residents. It's now home to urgent care, women's imaging center, lab services, and primary care pediatrics. The WVU Medicine Spring Mills office building now open to serve you.
Kids, what's the rule about running in the house?
Always run hard out of the box.
That's not what I said.
He's running third. Here comes the play at the plate. Uh-oh.
Oh, let's clean that up before Mom gets home.
Exciting baseball action and quality family time? There's a place for that. Nationals Park. Get more bang for your buck this baseball season with deals on tickets and concessions for the whole family. See you at Nationals Park, your place to run wild. Buy your tickets today at nationals.com.
This segment of the show brought to you by the Washington Nationals. Join Nationals players and broadcasters in supporting their favorite charities with the inaugural Nationals Charity Bracket Challenge. Proceeds will benefit great causes such as the ZIMS Foundation, Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and more. Plus, you'll get discounted Nats tickets for participating. Simply visit nationals.com/bracket to get started. Rob here along with David Welch, Jason Barrett, Mike Caryl, and John Doyle in studio. 304-263-6540 and at 304-263-6586, our telephone numbers. Let's go to flood relief money, Woody Thrasher, and the governor here. We have one member of the House of Delegates, another who's been there and is campaigning to get back and get to the bottom line of what's going on here. Jason Barrett, let's start with you. We talked to you on Thursday morning about this right after the 8:30 news break here. And since then, Roman Prezioso and Tim Miley have drafted a letter saying that Governor Justice basically should improve or get out, and we've seen Woody Thrasher resign.
Well, and clearly the governor wants to hold Woody Thrasher accountable for his actions and not getting the job done, and I think the governor should hold himself to that same standard, and I think that's what the Senate minority leader and the House minority leader in their letter, I think that's what they're trying to tell the governor. It's constitutional mandate that he lives at the governor's mansion. It's very clear that he does not. It's my understanding that he's been to work at the Capitol less than 30 days in the first 6 months of the year. So, I think that the people expect their governor to take the job seriously, to work full time, and I think it's very evident that Governor Justice doesn't do that. So I think that's the point of the letter. It's easy for the governor to come out and blame Woody Thrasher. I think it's clear Commerce didn't do what they were supposed to do. There's repercussions for that. There also has to be repercussions for the governor not doing his job. So I think that's the point of the letter.
John, what is the job description of the governor? I'm interested. Do you know what the job description of the governor is in terms of the hours he's supposed to work, where he's supposed to live? I'm thinking it's a pretty broad job description.
Well, most elected officials aren't required to put a certain amount of time, and I think, for example, the Berkeley County Council, I think they have to meet at least. They have to be present at least 3 meetings a year. The members of the legislature are not required to be there at all. They're supposed to be. I don't know that there's a hard requirement for the governor, other than he is to live at the governor's mansion, not at his house on Main Street in White Sulphur Springs.
That's actually in the Constitution?
Yes, and
really?
Mike Folk brought that up this year, and I think that he asked the governor to either live in the house or that he needed to go because that is a constitutional requirement.
And even if it were, David, even if that were not a constitutional requirement, the mere fact that the taxpayers are providing him or her a residence, I think certainly at least implies that he or she is supposed to live there during their term.
Well, I can tell you 2 governors of other states who did not live in the governor's mansion. One was Tom Kean in New Jersey, because his house was bigger than the governor's mansion, and he preferred it, and it was only about an hour away. The other one was Ronald Reagan. When he was elected governor in 1966 in California, didn't like the governors. It was too little and small, and he and Nancy did not live there. Chose not to live in the governor's mansion. I guess they didn't have that in their constitutions, though, as we have here
Didn't
in West
Jerry
Virginia.
Brown also not live in the governor's mansion his first term?
Yeah,
No, he thought it was too big.
Jerry Brown lived in a 1-bedroom apartment, actually.
Right.
Didn't he?
But they've now restored the old governor's mansion in the park behind, and I think he's now living in it.
Yeah, again, it is that constitutional requirement, but I think that's what's more appalling and frustrating for ordinary voters, I think, is the fact that the guy's only showed up for work 29 days out of the year. And that's the real problem, is that if he's not there, who's running the show? I think it's very clear that the Chief of Staff, Mike Hall, his role has been diminished because Bray Carey, who I described as a glorified intern in the past, is now working part-time at minimum wage, and it's very clear to I think a lot of people that he's calling a lot of the shots in the governor's office, and so it just muddies the waters as to who is responsible for the flood victims not receiving the compensation that they are due, and moving forward, how are we managing this governor's office? Who's calling the shots? I think the people deserve to know the answer to that.
And I think firing Woody Thrasher, and that's really what happened. Woody officially resigned, but he was told by the governor to resign. I think that was a smart move. I think Woody Thrasher finally paid the price for his arrogance.
Why was it a smart move? Because he was arrogant? It was a smart move?
Well, I've talked to a lot of legislators who tell me that when they would ask him questions, basically instead of getting answers, they would get bluster. And finally, I think it came back to haunt him.
And this was a governor justice appointee, correct?
Oh, that is correct, yes.
Okay. Part of his cabinet.
That's right.
All right.
I think Secretary Thrasher focused entirely in his job on economic development, and he was very active in that. And I think was doing a decent job of being a cheerleader and promoter of economic development initiatives. But deep down in the bureaucracy that happened to be assigned, of course that the assignment between that and public safety department or agency was ambiguous, and that's the trouble. I mean, it was just bad management. I know when I was tax commissioner, I had one clear mission, and that was to administer the collection of revenues to keep the state running, and that there was no doubt that's what so there wasn't any ambiguity in my mission, is what I'm saying, particularly after we got rid of auditing local governments.
Yeah. But you make a good point on this, Mike, in that the mission of that flood relief program, some of it is in the bailiwick of commerce, and some of it is in the bailiwick of Homeland Security. It's one of those things that has different aspects.
So the funds, the $150 million, are not all in one place?
Well, no. The funds came from the federal government.
Okay.
Now, and it's a debate, who is going to own the problem. Governor Tomlin, and this happened in the last few months of his administration, decided commerce. I think it was a right decision to say somebody needs to own the problem. I think you could have made an equal argument that Homeland Security could have owned the problem. I don't know if that would have turned out any better.
But this is exactly what you get when you have an uncaring, bloated bureaucracy. Is this lack of focus on your mission and your duty. That's what I attribute the in other words, it and Woody Thrasher failed to realize and focus on that part of his mission. But that's what about all the people between him and the lowest clerk? What did they do? Now he took the fall for it, as he should. I agree with all that. But what about all the bureaucrats between
Well,
him
that's what we
and
all
the
want.
clerk?
We all want to know here. I mean, I said this when we first opened the show today. Something to the effect of maybe you've got people who come from the private sector in these important government jobs who don't understand how government works. They don't understand the complicated
or how it doesn't work. It should.
Mechanics of government. But somebody does. I mean, there are professional people who understand how government works. Wouldn't they be full-time, permanent employees of these departments and not political appointees who could have made this thing work? I would think.
Very often,
and if not, we need to get new people.
And here's where I disagree with Mike. Very often, what happens is, and it's true in administrations of Democrats or Republicans, you have a new group of people come in, the political people with the new governor, and they think they have these ideas about how things ought to work. And sometimes what you have is the civil service people who have been there for a long time, and they'll say, "Now wait a minute. If you want to do this, you got to be careful about how you do it." And sometimes they'll listen, and sometimes they won't. And often it's when they don't listen that these things happen.
Well, the great irony here is to get this governor who blames everybody else for every problem that ever comes down the pike, and now the Democrats are firing back and saying, "We want you to resign. It's your fault."
Well, the buck does stop with him.
Well, and part of the problem is that I think that there's appears to be several emails from through Woody Thrasher's office, high up, not some low-level clerk, high up, through attorneys that they knew this was going on. This is a flood that happened in the governor's backyard. It affected his golf course. How does he not know?
Right.
If he's not in Charleston every day, he has to be in White Sulphur Springs and Greenbrier County in those areas to see this.
He's got to be somewhere.
He's got to be somewhere. I mean, he's not in the bunker, I don't think, at the Greenbrier. So,
That's flooded, isn't it?
Figuratively speaking, or literally,
either. He has to know that these folks aren't getting the relief that they were promised. There's plenty of emails to his office as well, and one of the emails from Woody Thrasher's office was that he wanted to make sure that people said that he was a nice guy in a memo, not whether these people are actually getting the relief they need. He wants it to be out there that he's a nice guy, and that's a quote. I want to look like I'm a nice guy.
On the WVU Medicine Berkeley Medical Center talk line is Senate Finance Chair Craig Blair. And Craig, I know you wanted to mention something about Mark Train, but if we could, let's talk Woody Thrasher for a second with you here. Good resignation or not?
I think it's a good resignation. Hey, by the way, great conversation across the table with all of you guys this morning.
Thank you.
I regret not being there because what a wonderful medium for the people to be able to understand some of the things that's going on and get the different perspectives. Now, with that said, I was the chairman of government organization when we actually moved this over to Commerce, and I think it was in 2017 that it was done. I can't remember that for sure. And the governor's office was actually denying that they wanted to, they requested this to be handled by going to Commerce. But the fact of the matter is that we produced the emails that showed otherwise from that standpoint. So now you factor that in with your people that you've got working there, being a new piece of legislation, that can actually cause some of the problems too. They've got to learn how to handle what's going on and realize that this is part of their part of their duties, so to speak. If we had to do over again, I think that we would have sent it to DMAPS and Homeland Security to be able to manage it from there.
Fair point. Any objections to that?
No.
Craig.
Wow, I shut them down.
Yeah, you did. Drop the mic and walk out of the room, buddy.
There's good arguments to be. You made great arguments. In fact, I'm going on talk line at 10:45 today, and to talk about this very issue, for that matter. But the governor's got to be more proactive in being part of this. But we should also maybe question ourselves and say, well, are we grateful that he's only showing up one day a week?
Take what you can get, right?
Yeah.
Now that's a fresh perspective that I really respect, Craig. That's a good way of looking at it, right?
Well, if you understand some of what takes place down in the governor's office, then it makes sense because he can turn on a dime on things. And I do that too. When I get new information, I turn on a dime as well. But you've got to be overseeing your cabinet secretaries and getting good information in and making the right decisions, and the buck stops with the governor. And I've got some concerns myself and he wasn't elected as a Democrat. He signed on to being a Republican, and that's fine. But I don't like him on the brand of being the Republicans because we're trying to do the right things.
Craig, Mike, Carl, there was a reference earlier to Bray Carey, I think, from John Doyle. What's your impression of what a cabinet officer would do if Bray Carey gave him some direction? In other words, is he actually in the chain of command and exercising as a surrogate for the governor, or just advising the governor and then the governor gives the orders?
No, I think Bray is clearly in the chain of command, and but there's the flaw in itself. It's one thing to be able to facilitate the will of the governor, whether it's Mike Hall, the chief of staff, or Bray Carey, or both of them. But it's incumbent upon the governor to be sitting down, talking to over and over on a daily basis with your cabinet secretaries, getting full briefings on what's taking place and happening. I'm telling you right now, if I was governor, I'd be at 365 days and wanting more days to be the governor and working with these people, getting out into these agencies, getting around and finding out what's going on and saying, hey, how can I help? What is it that we can do to make things go better in the state of West Virginia? And that'd be one of the things, especially since the governor lives in Greenbrier County, you'd sit there and say, hey, what's going on with the flood relief? What is happening on that? It's inexcusable, in my opinion, that we're where we're at today, especially for where he lives at. And one other clarification, the Constitution says that he'll live in the seat of government, which is in Charleston. So you don't necessarily have to live in the governor's mansion, but you have to live in the city of Charleston itself, the seat of government.
All right, so how do we pick and choose which rules we're going to enforce and who would actually enforce that?
Now, say that again.
How do we pick and choose which of the rules of the Constitution in the state we're going to enforce, and whose job would it be to enforce it?
Well, ultimately, it comes back upon the governor to enforce. But anybody can actually file there's a legal term for it. I'm not a lawyer, but you can file a complaint, so to speak, and actually holding to that, and he either has to be in the seat of government or he's out. I'm surprised nobody's ever done that at this point.
We happen to have an attorney in the room, Mike Carl.
Greg, I would be surprised if the courts, particularly today, West Virginia judiciary, would take it on itself to respond to a citizen complaint about this. And I think the impeachment power is where I would say the enforcement of that rule lies.
Are you proposing impeachment of the governor, Michael?
Well, that would, sure.
Well, that's the proper check on the executive.
I think we just had some groundbreaking news here.
Oh well, if they somebody moved to impeach Lawfrey, I don't think this. I think that's just throwaway language in the Constitution about live in the seat of the government. I don't think it's legally enforceable. Now, I was privileged to work for a very active governor, Arch Moore, and he was in the mansion. He was in the office all the time. And there was no doubt who was running the executive branch when he was there.
Is it possible, and this is kind of an opinion that I have, and I think maybe some other people share it, I don't think he likes the job. I don't think he really wants the job. He might even regret that he sought the job. So it doesn't matter because he's not going to do it again. He's going to finish this term out and not run for re-election. So why does he care?
I don't know that that's true.
It's just an opinion. It's a feeling, not a fact.
That's my opinion. That's my opinion as well. And I think Joe Manchin talked him into running, and so he needs to take some responsibility. Maybe he just needs to go back to his old job of being governor.
Do you think Joe Manchin talked him into running, or do you think he talked Joe Manchin into letting him run?
Well, the Democrats were, the different camps were split. Obviously, there was the Goodwin camp that.
I think Jim Justice, for some reason, thought he wanted to be governor. He may not now, David, but I think he wanted it at the time. He was a Republican most of his life until 2015. I believe he decided to be a Democrat simply because he looked at the numbers and saw that he could not beat Bill Cole in a Republican primary, but he could beat him in a general election if he found some party to give him the nomination. And he rented the Democratic Party to get on the November ballot. And I, as a Democrat, say that's on us. We should not have allowed that to happen.
Hey, may I add one thing on this since we're beating up on the governor?
Go ahead, Craig.
And as a Democrat, when he's elected as a Democrat, I'll have to give him kudos for one thing, and that is his cabinet secretaries that he's hired to do the job out here. Most of them have done an absolutely phenomenal job, and I was saying that when he was a Democrat. When he switched parties, I don't remember any of them changing until I guess now we're going to see a change with Thrasher. But the fact of the matter is, these cabinet secretaries have worked extremely well with the legislature, and we've tried to work well with the governor. For that matter, but I certainly wish that he would actually put more time in, whether he lives in the seat of government or not. The bottom line is you really need to be on the job on a daily basis because we got big things to do in West Virginia.
I know many of you tried to like the governor, and he just won't let you. Jason Barrett, go ahead.
Hey, Craig, it's Jason. I'm hearing some rumors of other folks in the administration resigning. Have you heard anything about that?
That's chatter's been going on. In fact, Thrasher, the chatter of him resigning or leaving has been going on for 2 or 3 months. And yeah, I've heard some of that. But Jason, you know as well as I do that we hear these things all the time. It's a big rumor mill down there, and sometimes it comes to pass, sometimes they don't. I don't know of anything actually that's in the pipeline that's taking place, but yeah, I've heard some of that chatter, but nothing specific.
Greg, thanks so much for calling in. Very much appreciated.
Hey, wait a minute. I wanted to call in on Mark and lay something out. You
got 20 seconds.
Okay, well, I don't know where I can do it 20, but when I was saying on the $500,000 maximum from the state is I'm looking at it from the political standpoint of being able to get the votes through for that. The bottom line is that I do think it can be negotiated down. It was this year for that matter. But you left two things out. We got to get ridership up on this.
And what's number two?
The other thing is the fare increases as well. There's no way that we can actually take and fund $3.2 million for 500 riders. That comes out to being $6,000 a year.
Way too much per rider. I got you. I got to get to the commercial break. Craig, thank you.
The Honda 4th of July sales event has brilliant deals on our most popular vehicles, like the Civic, Fit, and Pilot. It's a reason to celebrate across the country, from the Liberty Bell to Hollywood, and even back up to Niagara Falls. So come discover the 2018 KBB.com Best Overall Brand during the Honda 4th of July sales event, now at your Honda dealer.
Miller Honda, south of Winchester, home of the lifetime powertrain warranty. www.mymillerhonda.com.
Based on 2018 brand image awards from Kelly Blue Book. Visit kbb.com for more information.
L.A. Roberts is Berkeley County's oldest jeweler, where every season is new and exciting. In fact, new is old school to us, and though it's nothing new, our old traditions like exceptional service, quality, and value maintain L.A. Roberts Jewelers as the old master among so many new kids on the block. Whether you're a newcomer or part of the old guard, entrust all your fine jewelry needs to L.A. Roberts, Old World Jewelers for a new age, in historic downtown Martinsburg.
Since 1877, Farmers & Mechanics insurance companies have proudly supported our local community. Farmers & Mechanics has the insurance products to meet your needs, including home, auto, farm, dwelling fire, business owners, and umbrella coverage. Please contact your local independent agency for a review of your insurance needs and ask for a policy from the company that knows you best. Farmers & Mechanics Insurance Companies, just off Edwin Miller Boulevard on Administrative Drive in Martinsburg. FMIWV.com.
Downtown Martinsburg is the place to be for the Fridays at 5 summer concert series from June 1st through August 31st. Enjoy great music and fun with well-known musicians, bands, and Martinsburg artists that'll liven up your spirits at the town square. Concerts begin at 5 p.m. and usually last until 7. Enjoy great music while visiting Martinsburg's Farmers Market, housed on East King Street, where you're able to enjoy fresh fruits and veggies, chicken and pork, and a lot more. Pets are allowed in the square during the concerts, provided they're on a 6-foot leash or less. For the full concert summer series lineup, go to MainStreetMartinsburg.com.
Hey, welcome back to the program, Eastern Panhandle Talk Friday edition, brought to you this morning by Bechtel Jewelers, West Virginia's largest Pandora retailer, Route 11 South Inwood, next to Viva Mexico. 304-263-6540 and 6586, our telephone numbers where we find Judy on the WVU Medicine Jefferson Medical Center talk line. Good morning, Judy. You're on the program with Rob, Dave, Jason, Mike, and John.
Hey, good morning, guys. I really do appreciate you taking on this discussion again. I know I ranted and actually ended up whining about this whole situation with RISE and the governor's office, but I guess my question today is, what's the bottom line? I cannot believe that in our state of West Virginia we do not have competent, talented staff who can do what Horn LLP claims that they do for everybody. You know, they've handled about $23 billion in federal funds for mitigation and risk assessments. But we have that here in West Virginia. We have competent people, and it's not going to cost us a major portion of the money that we have set aside to help these families. So what's the bottom line? What's the next step to force competency in delivering the money that's left to our families? That's my big question.
From what I understand, we've spent $17 million on Horn to distribute $1 million so far, Jason.
Well, that's the contract that I've heard that Horn is the $17 million. It looks like less than $1 million of the $149.8 million has actually been spent.
I thought it had been reduced to $9 million. I had heard that.
Is there any shred of evidence that there's any corruption or fraud going on here at all, Jason?
And that was my point.
We can raise that question, but is there any evidence that that's going on?
I think there's just too many questions to be able to answer that. I don't think anybody has the details or the information to be able to answer that, and that's why I think that the Committee on Special Investigations in the legislature needs to find that out, because this is what I said yesterday. This is either gross incompetence or corruption or both.
Well, it's so outrageous, and you go back to the governor running or not running. I mean, we can all have our own opinions on that. But it's hard to believe that a governor who oversaw a disaster like this would ever even be considered for re-election. I think it's that big. I think this is a huge deal.
Well, and Judy, to help answer your question, that the governor does have a press conference today. I've already seen a picture of his whiteboards. So hopefully he can, ease people's mind to have a plan moving forward with General Hoyer, who is now going to head up overseeing the money being allocated in the right places. So, hopefully he comes out with a plan and can really ease people's minds that the money is going to be spent where it needs to be.
And incidentally, I have great confidence in General Hoyer. If this problem can be fixed, he's the one to fix it.
Judy, I give you a lot of credit for bringing this issue with the intensity you brought it to my attention to get our discussion going on it sooner or later, one way or the other on this show. I appreciate the tip.
It's just something that would have just been brushed over until it was too late, and I truly don't believe it's too late. I was on the computer late last night looking on how you fold a contract out of Horn LLP without penalty. So, again, when we've got good people in our state and we have to pay for someone to help manage risk management funds, then let's keep it in our state and let's take care of our people. And if Justice doesn't feel that he's a part of our state because he doesn't want to do that, bottom line is he is corrupt. There is no other definition on how I describe our governor. He is corrupt.
Certainly someone pays taxes intentionally when he could falls in that.
Has any of that
definition.
been resolved yet, Jason? Has there been any payment?
Oh, he says the check's in the mail.
It's getting worse.
There's even more EOs.
Yeah, and that's it's just
again, whose job is it to enforce the payment of taxes?
Well, he said last week
the governor through the tax commissioner.
Yeah,
this is like a Dukes of Hazzard episode.
The governor said last week that all that he owed would be paid within days.
Somebody call Enos.
It obviously had to happen. There'd been a press release about it.
And why don't you believe that?
Judy, thanks for the call.
Thanks,
Much appreciated.
Judy.
Alrighty, and you all have a great weekend.
You too.
You too. So everything. I mean, what is the Attorney General's job in this state when it comes to law enforcement in these issues? Is he completely out of his purview on this?
Well, my view of Attorney General's job is that he's an attorney for the executive branch agencies and the state and the legislature when they call him for opinions and so forth. But most attorney generals, including the current one, have a far more expansive view of their role, and they proactive law enforcing, consumer protection, which the legislature sort of codified that initiative. I think, unfortunately, they did.
I mean, you could see the Attorney General's role, Rob. Perhaps I would think, or someone's role, but maybe it could be the AG's, as being the advocate for the very people who aren't getting their funding to rebuild their homes. I mean, that kind of fall in a generic consumer protection. People are entitled to some benefits and aren't getting.
All right, let me ask you this: if you let's say you're delinquent on your taxes to the state of West Virginia, who ultimately sends you a letter saying pay up or there's going to be consequences?
The tax department.
Okay, and who heads the tax department?
The tax commissioner, a fellow named Dale Stegger's the most qualified tax commissioner maybe ever, including yours truly.
Can this most qualified tax commissioner maybe ever send a letter to the governor saying if you don't pay by this date, here are the consequences?
I felt Dale's an old friend of mine, and I felt sorry for him ever since he took. I was glad he took the job
rather than you.
Yeah, but he's in a tough spot. He's a appointee of the governor.
Yeah, he's an old friend of mine too, and I agree with Mike. He is a first class person.
Okay, so why isn't the first class person making more of a public clamor about getting the taxes paid?
He serves at the will and pleasure of the governor, and this would be another vacancy the governor would have to fill if he did that.
Okay,
and it might not be. It might be somebody who's not nearly as good.
Right.
Well, but he's not collecting the taxes that are due. So what's the downside?
I imagine. Wait a minute. I imagine Dale has sent the letter.
Well,
I would imagine the letter was sent more than once.
And most of these are against Justice's company.
All right, clear the deck. We got to get final thoughts going right now. Let's start with you, Mike Caryl. Final thought.
Great series this weekend, Cubs and Cardinals. I'm sorry it doesn't include the Pirates. They're kind of drifting down to the bottom of the Central Division.
Jason Barrett.
1 year ago today, we lost a pillar of the community in Rick Wachtel, and we're certainly all thinking about him today.
John Doyle.
I had forgotten that. You're absolutely right, Jason.
David Welch.
Once again, our hearts at WRNR go out to Deputy Joaquin Moore and his family, and we wish them strength to get through this very difficult time.
And Jason, jumped my final thought for just a moment here today, and that was Rick Wachtel, who hired me at this radio station in October of 2010. We do miss him. God rest your soul, Richard. It's 10 o'clock. This is Talk Radio WRNR Martinsburg. Glenn Beck Show is next.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
CBS News on the Hour, sponsored by TheraWorks Relief.
I'm Peter King. White House reporters are catching their collective breath after the president's impromptu half-hour news conference in the White House driveway. He covered many subjects, including the 25% tariffs just imposed on hundreds of imported products from China.
We're putting tariffs on $50 billion worth of technology and other things because we have to, because we've been treated very unfairly.
China says it'll retaliate by matching every U.S. tariff with its own on American imports. Mr. Trump has said that retaliation will just make his list of tariffs longer. A half hour after the opening bell, the Dow is down 139 points. Mr. Trump also addressed the Justice Department report on the FBI.